Welcome to the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. I'm your host, registered dietitian and kidney stone expert, Melanie. After learning a ton about kidney stones and helping people prevent stones at the University of Chicago, I was fed up with all the terrible advice people were finding online. So I decided to do something about it. The Kidney Dietitian was born. This podcast is for people who want to learn what actually works to prevent kidney stones and still enjoy life, eating, and their favorite foods. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 7th episode of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. I am your host, registered dietitian and kidney stone expert, Melanie Betts. And so today I wanted to dive in something that I get asked about all the time, unsurprisingly, as a kidney stone dietitian. People ask me, how in the world can I drink enough water? Obviously, this is a very important question because water and fluid in general really is the most important thing you can do to prevent kidney stones for everyone. I talk a lot about how kidney stone nutrition is different for every single person, and that is certainly the case. But there is one constant that holds true for 99.999% of people, and that is that you need to drink a lot of water. Fluid in general, of course, most of that fluid should be water. I don't say 100% of people because there are definitely people with kidney stones out there that may have advanced kidney failure or liver failure or heart failure. And in those cases, drinking a lot of fluid may not be the most appropriate, but for the vast majority of us out there, drinking a lot more water than we may be used to is definitely key. That is the one thing that holds true for every single type of kidney stone, every single urine risk factor. Drinking water is so important. The reason that water is so important for kidney stone prevention is really because the more water you drink, the more urine you're going to make, right? The more you're going to pee. We all know that, right? And the more urine you make, the less concentrated your urine is going to be, which is the best thing that we can do to prevent stones, because the less concentrated your urine is, there's less room, or those molecules like calcium and oxalate are less likely to bump into each other and bind and form a kidney stone. And so truly, we get all fancy when it comes to kidney stone prevention with calcium and oxalate and salt and protein, right? We go on and on and on. But really, the most important thing that you can do to prevent stones is drink enough water. I probably don't talk about it enough because I feel like it's not very exciting advice, right? Drink more water. Like, how many times have you heard that from your doctor or even random people on TikTok, right? But it really is so true that drinking water is by far the most important thing you can do to prevent stones, to create a lot of urine, to make your urine less concentrated again. So it really is an important topic. And so I hope that today's podcast, I wanted to just highlighting my top tips to help you make sure that you are drinking enough water is helpful, because we know that drinking enough water can be hard for a lot of people. So how much water should you drink? So there isn't really one answer that's true for everyone. We can say that according to the American Urological Association guidelines, that anyone with stones, any type of stone, should be consuming enough fluid to produce at least 2.5 liters of urine output per day. I like to see that closer to 3 liters. So if we can get it to 3 liters, that makes me a very happy Melanie. But if you can at least get it to 2.5 liters, that's what the official guidelines say, then that is wonderful. For reference, the average urine output in the US, so the average fluid intake, is around 1.5 liters. So getting that up even to 2.5 liters for a lot of people can be very challenging. So in order to get that 2.5 liters of output per day, we probably should be drinking closer to 3 liters of fluid per day. And that equates to around 100 fluid ounces of water. So when you're thinking about, an 8-ounce glass of water, that's, so to help you kind of put that into context. So the typical, rule of thumb that you hear people say all the time, and I honestly don't even know where this came from, of everyone should be drinking 8-ounce glasses of water per day. That's only 64 ounces of water, which is great for some people. That's fine. But for those of us that produce stones, we want more than 64 ounces for sure. We really want it closer to around 100 ounces of fluid per day if we can. So notice that I keep using the word fluid, and I do that intentionally. I try to use the word fluid as much as I can because really all fluids count. So water, of course, is the best source of fluid for us. There's no doubt about that, but really all fluids count. So things like milk, that's very good for many of us with kidney stones. That definitely counts. Things like coffee, tea, even soda, all of those things do technically count towards our fluid goal. Of course, there are certain fluids that are going to be better than others. In the show notes, I'll drop a link to my blog post about the top drinks and beverages for kidney stones to kind of help you know which ones are best to choose. And of course, water is the best, but there's definitely other things that count. Milk can be a really great option. Even diet lemon lime soda. My favorite fluid is unsweetened sparkling water. So all of those, like LaCroix and Spindrift and Bubbly and Polar, like all of the endless brands that are out there these days, I think those are really great options. So know that when we talk about these fluid goals, it really does mean all fluid. All fluid does count towards that fluid goal. Of course, we want to avoid, basically it comes down to drinks with a lot of sugar in it, because that can actually increase stone risk. But other than that, pretty much all fluids are a goal, because we really want to make sure that you are getting in those fluids. Because like I said at the beginning, truly getting in enough fluid is by far the most effective thing that you can do to prevent stones. Even above sodium, I talk about sodium so much. Even above calcium, I talk about that endlessly too. But if you're not getting in enough fluid, other things really don't matter, honestly. So truly this fluid thing is so important. And so I want to be able to allow, if you will, as many fluids in your day and different types of fluids as possible, because I really think that helps people drink more. Water is great, but water, let's be real, gets pretty boring. I know. I love water. For me personally, it has to be very cold. People have asked me before, does it matter if the water is cold? No, it matters 0%. Like it doesn't for kidney stones or for health in general. It does not matter if water is hot or cold, room temperature, however you prefer to drink your water is going to be good for kidney stones. So let's dive into some of my tips to help you drink a little bit more. So my first tip is to add flavor to water, because as I was sort of just talking about, water's great, but it gets boring. Like, let's be real, especially when we're trying to drink such large amounts of water. Plain old water can get super boring. And so I found that for many people, even doing something as simple as adding in a little bit of lemon juice or lime juice, that can make a big difference, because it just makes it a bit more exciting and maybe makes you a little bit more likely to drink it, right? So that could be one option to help you drink more, is to make it more exciting with that lemon juice. Another thing you could do is add something like a sugar-free drink powder. So like Crystalite lemonade comes up all the time. That can be a really great option. There's those Mio drops. You add just a couple drops of flavoring, and those come in all sorts of flavors. That can be a good option. Whatever you like, whatever it is that helps you get in that fluid is a win. So all of these things I think can be really, really helpful. I already mentioned this, but my personal favorite way to add flavor to water, this isn't really adding flavor, but buying pre-flavored water, is those unsweetened sparkling waters. I've read, online that carbonated water isn't good for stones. That's simply not true. If that carbonated water is in the form of soda and has a ton of sugar, then yeah, that's not great for stones. But if the product that you're consuming doesn't have any actual sugar in it, there's no reason that you can't drink it if you have the stones, that you can't drink it. So rest assured that the carbonation is fine. Seltzer water is fine. All of these things are great options to help make that water more exciting, to help you want to drink it a little bit more, to prevent stones. So that's my tip number one, is to just add flavor and make water more exciting, so you'll want to drink it a little bit more. My next tip is to really do your best to spread that water intake throughout the day. I feel like, and I am certainly guilty of this myself, we wake up and we get going, we get to work, we take the kids to school, whatever, and you realize it's 2 p.m. and you've had no water. All you've had is your coffee, right? Which isn't great, because then during all of those hours that you haven't been drinking, your urine is going to be more concentrated, and so you're going to be at a higher risk of forming stones during that time. And so really, as much as you can, realistically, spreading that water as consistently throughout the day as possible is ideal, again, to avoid those periods of that more concentrated urine. I think that also makes it a little bit easier in some ways to meet your fluid goals because you don't have to play catch up. When you have those days where you sort of wake up from your work and your daily grind and you realize it's 2 p.m. and you haven't had any water, you're like, oh dear, I have to chug and binge a ton of water, and then you're just playing catch up. And honestly, that's not doing you a whole lot of good because you were more dehydrated earlier in the day anyway. And so just my tip is to, as much as you can, consume that water consistently throughout the day. Now, I know I've worked with many people who maybe are teachers or who are truck drivers or who have some profession or reason that they can't drink water consistently throughout the day. I would say do it as much as you realistically can, but I completely understand that there's many circumstances that maybe make that a little bit more different. Another one that comes up very often is that people find that when they start drinking a ton of water that they're going to the bathroom a ton at night, which isn't good because we need our sleep for mental and general health reasons, right? So for some people, if you can maybe kind of taper down your fluid intake towards the end of the day, that can be helpful for that going to the bathroom at night situation. So all of us are different. Obviously, it's not going to be totally exactly spaced for every single person that's listening to this podcast and every single person that has kidney stones. But as much as you can, trying to consistently, equally consume that water throughout the day really is the goal. So that's my next tip, is to spread that water consistently throughout the day. My next tip to help you make sure you're drinking as much as you can is to track your water intake. For many of us, once you get into this habit, you don't have to be tracking that every day because that's no fun. But for a lot of people, if you're just kind of mindlessly drinking water, you end up having no idea where you're really landing. And so it can be really helpful to say, okay, I'm going to track my water intake to make sure I'm meeting X amount throughout the day. So for many of us, that's going to be around 100 ounces of water throughout the day. A lot of people will, maybe you have a water glass and you say, okay, I have to get 4 of these glasses down throughout the day so I know that I'm meeting my goal. I like to take that one step further and say, okay, if I need 4 of these glasses by the end of the day, that means I need to have 2 of them by noon. I'm kind of breaking up that tracking and tracking it in smaller chunks than one whole day can really, really be helpful. Again, so we don't find ourselves in that situation of playing catch up, because that's just not fun. And again, isn't doing the most that it could to be preventing stones. And so for me, I have a huge water glass. It's a Michigan State water glass. It has Sparty on it. And I know that I want to get 4 of those in throughout the day. So I try to have 2 by noon and, break it up through there. So that those water glasses, in addition to the fluid that I'm getting from my coffee in the morning and my milk and my other fluids, I'm meeting my 100 fluid ounces goal. So hopefully that helps help you sort of track and get you some more water, because I know these things, it can be tough to get in that water. Another thing that can be helpful, a lot of people have found that utilizing fancy water bottles can be helpful to get your water. And I actually haven't done this, but many of my students in Kidney Stone Nutrition School and patients that I've worked with in the past have found that using a water bottle called Hydrate Spark, I know that there's other water bottles that do similar things, but the one that I'm most familiar with is this bottle called Hydrate Spark. It's really pretty cool. So this water bottle, it connects to an app on your phone, and it actually tracks how much water you drink. It also, in the app, and it also lights up to remind you to drink, which I think is maybe the best feature of it. It's like, hey, I haven't been lifted in a while. I'm going to light up to remind you to drink. So that's pretty cool. So if you want to get fancy, utilizing this, like a fancy water bottle, like the Hydrate Spark or other ones like that, can be really cool. I'll drop my affiliate link to Hydrate Spark in the show notes to this to this podcast, but that can be really helpful. There are less high-tech options like that. If you go to Amazon and you search water tracking water bottle, there's water bottles that have, ounce. It's not just ounces, because obviously there's many of water bottles that track ounces, but it has times on it. So, you have that full water bottle and there's literally by 10 a.m. I have to be down to this level. And then by noon I have to be down to this level. I've definitely had people that have found that those types of bottles are helpful as well. So lots of different things, right? We're all different things help all of us, but hopefully one of these things will help you drink a little bit more. And my last tip that I wanted to share is to really work your way up to this goal of 100 fluid ounces of water per day or so. So many of us are not drinking that much water, which is, the norm. Most people are not drinking that much water naturally. And so really to kind of work your way up, because if you go from, say, drinking 20 ounces of water per day or fluid per day, and you just jump up all of a sudden and you get to 100 fluid ounces per day, that's going to be really tough to do, because that's such a huge change all at once. That's going to be really hard to maintain that change, out of nowhere. And it also doesn't really give your body time to adjust. A lot of times people say, we're all gung-ho, right? When we get a kidney stone, we're like, oh gosh, I'm going to do everything in the world that I possibly can to prevent this stone. And so we do everything at once and we jump up to that 100 fluid ounces goal, which is great. That's not really hurting you, except that it's going to be hard to maintain because you haven't really slowly made that change. Plus, your bladder hasn't really had time to adjust to that really big difference in fluid intake. And so a lot of people have a hard time have more of an issue with going to the bathroom at night or going to the bathroom all the time during the day. People say, oh, it just feels like I'm living in the bathroom, which is fair. And in my experience, I found that when people kind of slowly work their way up to that 100 fluid ounces goal, they have a much easier time with that urinary frequency, with going to the bathroom less often. So really just kind of give yourself some grace, give yourself some space to make this change, because whether we're talking about fluid or again, sodium or calcium or whatever dietary or lifestyle change you're trying to make, even if it's something as easy as not easy, this is not easy, but something as something like just flossing your teeth, right? That's a big change, and incorporating any change into our life that we're not used to takes a lot of mental space and energy. So give yourself grace, give yourself space to make these changes. Do not expect you to do this all at once, because that's just not how humans work. Change is hard. So give yourself time. So for example, if you are drinking, say, 40 ounces of water a day, then maybe set your goal at 60 and work on that goal for 2 weeks. It takes a long time for us to incorporate these changes. I have read studies that show that it takes around 3 months actually to make a behavior change routine. So these things take a really long time. So 2 weeks is really not that long in the grand scheme of things, right? So work yourself up to 60 and then maybe add 20 more ounces and you get where I'm going. And over time, you will get to that 100 ounces and it will feel a lot easier. It will feel a lot more manageable. If you aren't able to do it, you may feel like less of a failure, which may help you keep going. All of these things can help you reach that goal more consistently than if you just jump right in and say, I'm going to do everything all at once. I'm a big fan of making these small changes for sort of long-term effects, right? If that makes sense. So, yes. And then lastly, kind of along that same vein, is I wanted to say that even if you can't make that goal of 2.5 liters of urine output per day or your fluid goal of 100 fluid ounces per day, know that every little bit of water that you drink more of compared to your baseline is doing you a lot of good. So it's not like, it's no benefit until you hit that 2.5 liters of output and then you're in the clear. It's a spectrum, right? It's a scale. So every little bit closer to your goal that you get, you're still doing yourself a lot of good. Again, because that fluid is so important for kidney stone prevention. So don't feel like you're a failure if you don't hit that 100 ounces. If one day you hit 80 ounces, that's wonderful. That is probably a whole lot better than what you would have been doing if you hadn't been working on your fluid intake, right? So give yourself grace, give yourself space to do the best that you can. We're all human. Life happens, and that's okay. You just move on and live your life and move on to the next day. So with that, I'm going to close the 7th episode of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. I hope that this gave you some tips and some things to think about as all of us really are working on increasing our fluid intake, because it's so important for so many of us. And with that, I hope that you have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening to today's episode. For more help with kidney stones, check out my website, www.thekidneydietitian.org. For more personalized help from me, check out my online course, Kidney Stone Nutrition School. VIP enrollment includes help directly from me. I can't wait to see you there and help you prevent kidney stones. Have a great day.